Another reporter called out, "What message does this send to other species watching?" Whitfield considered the question carefully before answering. "That humanity values peace, but will not be tested through cruelty," he said. "That we extend mercy freely, but firmly refuse to be seen as weak simply because we choose kindness first. Anyone who mistakes our compassion for helplessness will learn, as the Corveth did, that they were mistaken." The room erupted into questions, but Whitfield raised a hand for silence one final time. "Let this be Earth's message to the galaxy," he said, his voice carrying clearly across the room. "We do not seek conflict. We do not seek conquest. But we will always answer cruelty against the innocent with a response the offending party will never forget." That night, far from the noise of press conferences and political statements, Admiral Whitfield stood alone on the observation deck of the Valiant Resolve, looking out at the stars. The ship orbited peacefully now, its weapons silent, its mission complete. General Park joined him quietly, standing beside him without speaking for a long moment. "You did the right thing," she finally said, "choosing restraint after the attack. Many wanted full-scale war." "Restraint isn't weakness," Whitfield said. "It's control. Anyone can destroy. It takes more strength to know when to stop." Park nodded, understanding clearly in her eyes. "Do you think this is truly over?" Whitfield was silent for a moment, considering her question carefully. "For now," he said. "But the galaxy is far larger than we ever imagined. There will be other species, other tests, other moments where someone doubts what we're capable of." "And when that happens?" Park asked. Whitfield's eyes hardened slightly, though his voice remained calm. "We'll remind them," he said simply, "just as we reminded the Corveth." Meanwhile, deep within Corveth territory, Commander Vresh Talon stood in a quiet holding chamber, stripped of his former rank, awaiting judgment from his own government for the disaster he had caused. Through a small window, he could see distant stars, cold and silent, indifferent to his failure. Kor, his former second-in-command, entered quietly, his expression unreadable. "They've decided your fate," Kor said. "Exile, stripped of all military rank and honor." Vresh said nothing, staring out at the stars. "You underestimated them," Kor continued. "We all did." "I saw only weakness," Vresh finally said, his voice hollow. "I saw a species that hid behind treaties instead of strength. I was wrong." "They showed mercy," Kor said quietly. "Even after what you did to them, they chose restraint over total destruction." Vresh turned to face him, bitterness and disbelief mixing in his expression. "Mercy? Or calculation? Perhaps they simply understood that destroying us completely would create more enemies than it would end." "Does it matter which it was?" Kor asked. "The result remains the same. They proved themselves stronger, wiser, and more disciplined than we believed possible." Vresh had no answer. He simply turned back to the window, watching the stars in silence, forced to accept a truth he had once found impossible to imagine. Humanity was far more than the weak, defenseless species he had assumed them to be. Back on Earth, 6 months later, a quiet ceremony was held at the newly rebuilt Earth Medical Fleet headquarters. Standing before a small crowd of officials, survivors, and family members, Captain Daniel Reyes stood tall, despite the faint limp that remained from his injuries. Beside him stood Rachel, Elena, Priya, Frank, and little Toby, now fully recovered, his bright eyes filled with the innocent excitement only children seem to hold on to, even after facing the worst humanity's enemies could offer. President Marsh stepped forward holding a small plaque. "Today," she said, addressing the gathered crowd, "we honor the crew and survivors of the Mercy Horizon, a ship that carried out its mission of healing and compassion, even when faced with cruelty beyond imagination." She turned to Daniel. "Captain Reyes, your courage, and the courage of your crew, reminded humanity of who we are, even in our darkest moments. Because of your bravery, Earth was given the truth it needed to respond with both strength and honor." Daniel accepted the plaque quietly, his throat tight with emotion as he glanced toward his crew. People who had trusted him with their lives, and who had survived against overwhelming odds. "This isn't just for me," Daniel said, addressing the crowd. "This is for every doctor, every nurse, every soldier who never made it home. We remember them. We honor them by continuing exactly what they died protecting: compassion, even in the face of cruelty." The crowd applauded softly, many wiping away tears. As the ceremony ended, Daniel knelt down beside Toby, who tugged gently at his sleeve. "Captain Reyes?" Toby asked innocently. "Are the bad aliens gone forever?" Daniel smiled gently, placing a comforting hand on the boy's shoulder. "Not forever," he said honestly. "But we're ready now if they ever come back. And more importantly, you're safe. That's what matters most." Toby nodded, satisfied with the answer, before running off to join Rachel, who watched with a proud, relieved smile. That evening, Admiral Whitfield stood once again on the observation deck of the Valiant Resolve, watching Earth slowly rotate beneath him, peaceful and unaware of how close it had come to a very different fate. General Park joined him, holding 2 cups of coffee, offering one to the Admiral. "They're calling it Earth's Mercy Doctrine," she said, referring to news reports covering the aftermath of the conflict. "Strength without cruelty, justice without endless war." Whitfield accepted the coffee, taking a slow sip as he considered her words. "Let's hope it's a lesson the galaxy remembers," he said quietly. Park studied him carefully. "Do you think it will be enough to keep us safe from whoever else might be watching?" Whitfield's gaze drifted toward the vast, endless expanse of stars beyond the window. Countless unknown worlds, countless unknown species, some perhaps friendly, others perhaps far more dangerous than the Corvette had ever been. "No," he admitted honestly, "but it's a start. And it's proof of exactly what humanity stands for. Not weakness, not endless aggression, but balance. Compassion, tempered by strength." He paused, watching Earth turn slowly beneath them, safe for now, its people unaware of just how close disaster had come. "Let them test us again if they must," Whitfield said softly, almost to himself. "Earth will always answer, not with endless cruelty, but with exactly the response required. No more, no less." Behind him, the stars stretched endlessly into the darkness, silent witnesses to humanity's first true test among the galaxy's many species, a test that Earth had not only survived, but had answered with both strength and unmistakable resolve. 1 year had passed since the Corvette attack on the Mercy horizon. Earth had changed in that time, not through fear, but through growth. New treaties had been signed, new alliances had formed with cautious species who had watched humanity's response and decided they preferred Earth as a friend rather than an enemy. The galaxy, it seemed, had learned to be careful around the small blue planet that answered cruelty with precision instead of chaos. But not everyone had learned that lesson. On the outer edge of explored space, far beyond even the Corvette's old territory, a massive dark ship drifted silently among the stars. It bore no markings, no flags, no signs of any known species. Its hull was black as space itself, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. Inside, in a chamber lit only by dim red light, a group of beings watched a recording on a large screen. The footage showed Earth's fleet destroying the Corvette communication array. It showed the precise, coordinated strike on their shipyards. It showed Admiral Whitfield's calm, unwavering warning to Commander Vresh. A tall, thin figure stood at the front of the chamber, watching closely. His skin was pale gray, his eyes solid black without pupils. He was called Jarn Ossa, a name known and feared among smaller species across this region of space. A broker of war, a leader of mercenaries who worked for the highest bidder. "Impressive," Jarn said quietly, studying the footage. "The Corvette were fools to attack such a well-defended target." "Well defended?" asked one of his officers, confused. "Our reports say the ship carried no weapons at all." "Exactly," Jarn said, turning to face his crew. "They needed no weapons. Their strength lies elsewhere, in coordination, in restraint, in knowing precisely when and how to strike." He smiled thinly. "That makes them dangerous and valuable." "Valuable, sir?" Jarn walked slowly toward the window, looking out at the distant, barely visible light of a star system far beyond his ship's current position. The direction of Earth. Every powerful species eventually attracts attention, he said. Empires seeking allies, warlords seeking new weapons, and those of us, he added, gesturing to himself, who understand the true value of testing a rising power before it becomes too strong to challenge. His second-in-command frowned. You intend to attack them directly? No, Jarn said. Direct attack failed for the Corveth. We will be smarter. We test not their military, but their unity, their trust, their compassion. He turned back to his crew, his black eyes gleaming faintly in the red light. Every strength has a matching weakness. Humanity's compassion made them dangerous when threatened. But compassion can also be exploited. He tapped a command into the console before him, bringing up a new image, a small remote human colony on the edge of explored space, a peaceful settlement known as New Haven, home to nearly 10,000 civilians, mostly farmers, teachers, and families. This colony sits far from Earth's main defense fleet, Jarn said. Poorly protected, perfect for a controlled test. What kind of test? His officer asked. Jarn's thin smile widened slightly. We will not attack them directly as the Corveth did. Instead, we will threaten them just enough to force Earth's hand, to see exactly how far they will go, and exactly how quickly, to protect even their smallest, most distant colony. On Earth, life had settled into a new rhythm. At Earth Medical Fleet Headquarters, Captain Daniel Reyes now served as a senior advisor, training new medical crews on protocols developed after the Mercy Horizon attack. Protocols meant to ensure no ship would ever again be caught so unprepared. In a training room, Daniel watched as young medical officers practiced emergency evacuation drills, their movements sharp, disciplined, confident. Better, Daniel said, nodding approvingly. Much better than last week. Elena, now serving as head instructor for the program, walked up beside him. They're learning fast. None of them want a repeat of what happened to us. None of us do, Daniel agreed quietly. Elena studied him for a moment. You still think about it? The attack. Daniel didn't answer immediately. Every day, he finally admitted. Not with fear anymore, just memory. It reminds me why this training matters. Their conversation was interrupted by an alert on Elena's wrist communicator. She glanced down, frowning at the message. Emergency briefing, she said. All senior staff, effective immediately. Daniel's stomach tightened. That's not routine. No, Elena said, already moving toward the door. It's not. In the Central Command briefing room, Admiral Whitfield stood before General Park, Colonel Ahmed, and several other senior officers, along with Daniel and Elena, who had been called in due to their unique experience with hostile first contact. A holographic display showed a distant star system with a small human colony marked in blue. 6 hours ago, Whitfield began, we received an encrypted message directed at New Haven Colony. The message came from an unknown source, demanding tribute, resources, technology, and colonists to be handed over within 72 hours, or the colony will be destroyed. The room went tense. Tribute? Colonel Ahmed asked. Not conquest? Not war? No, Whitfield said. This isn't the Corveth. This is something else entirely. He gestured to Grace Chen, who stepped forward with new information. We've identified the sender, Grace said. A mercenary known as Jarn Asa. He's infamous across several sectors for exactly this kind of tactic, targeting smaller, less defended settlements to extort resources or manpower, using the threat of destruction as leverage. Why target us? Elena asked. Why now? Grace hesitated. We believe he's testing us, sir. Following the Corveth incident, our reputation has changed. Some may see us as newly powerful, worth extorting. Others may simply be probing our response to indirect threats rather than direct attacks. Whitfield's jaw tightened. New Haven has almost no military presence. If we send the main fleet, it will take valuable time we may not have. If we don't respond with sufficient strength, we risk confirming exactly what he's testing. That indirect threats will make us hesitate. Daniel stepped forward. Admiral, permission to speak. Whitfield nodded. Go ahead, Captain. After the Mercy Horizon, everyone focused on strength, on making sure Earth could never be caught defenseless again, Daniel said. But New Haven isn't a hospital ship surrounded by open space. It's 10,000 civilians. If this Jarn is testing our restraint under pressure, a purely military response might play right into his hands. What do you suggest? Whitfield asked. Daniel took a breath. Send a fast response team, small, precise, capable of protecting the colony directly, while simultaneously showing this Jarn that Earth doesn't need to send an entire fleet to handle a threat like him. Strength doesn't always mean size, Admiral. Sometimes it means precision. Whitfield considered this carefully, exchanging a glance with General Park. Agreed, Whitfield finally said. Prepare a rapid response team, small, elite, capable of both defense and negotiation if necessary. Captain Reyes, given your experience, I want you accompanying this mission as an advisor. Daniel straightened. Understood, Admiral. Elena, Whitfield continued, your medical expertise may be needed if this situation turns violent. You'll join as well. Elena nodded firmly. Yes, sir. Move quickly, Whitfield said. We have less than 72 hours before this Jarn expects an answer. Aboard a small fast Earth vessel called the Swift Mercy, Daniel stood in the cockpit beside the ship's young pilot, Lieutenant Maya Torres, Captain Lisa Torres's younger sister, recently assigned to active duty following her sibling's success during the Corveth conflict. ETA to New Haven? Daniel asked. 6 hours, Captain, Maya replied. We'll arrive well within the deadline. Elena walked in from the medical bay checking supplies. Colony defenses are minimal, a handful of local militia, mostly farmers with basic weapons. If Jarn decides to attack before we arrive, they won't stand a chance. He won't attack yet, Daniel said, though his voice carried more hope than certainty. Not if he's testing our response. He wants to see what we do, not just destroy the colony outright. And if you're wrong? Elena asked quietly. Daniel didn't have a comforting answer. Meanwhile, aboard Jarn's dark ship, hidden just beyond New Haven's sensor range, the mercenary leader watched patiently as his crew monitored the colony below. Movement detected, an officer reported. Small human vessel approaching. Fast, but lightly armed compared to what we anticipated. Jarn's black eyes narrowed with interest. Small and precise, not the overwhelming force I expected. He leaned forward slightly. Interesting. Perhaps they've learned subtlety since the Corveth incident. Orders, sir? Jarn considered for a long moment. The human's choice told him something valuable. They were not simply reacting with blind strength, but adapting, thinking, evolving their response based on the nature of each threat. Let them land, Jarn finally said. Let's see exactly how humanity handles a threat it cannot simply outgun. He smiled thinly, a new kind of curiosity replacing his earlier calculations. This, he murmured, will tell us far more than a direct attack ever could. As the Swift Mercy descended toward New Haven's small landing platform, Daniel looked out at the peaceful colony below. Modest houses, green farmland, children playing in open fields, unaware of the danger silently watching from above. Whatever happens, Daniel said quietly to Elena beside him, we protect these people, no hesitation. Elena nodded firmly. No hesitation. As their ship touched down, none of them yet knew that this small colony was about to become the center of a far larger test, one that would determine not just New Haven's fate, but how the wider galaxy would come to understand exactly what humanity was willing to do to protect even its smallest, most distant home. Above them, hidden in the dark of space, Jarn also watched closely, waiting to see exactly how far Earth's compassion and its resolve truly extended. Should we expect retaliation, Commander? Kor asked. Fresh let out a low, rumbling laugh. From what? A species that hides behind treaties and painted symbols instead of weapons? They have no fleet capable of reaching us here. Even if they did, they lack the will to use it. Our scouts report increased military activity near their homeworld, another officer added cautiously. Vresh waved a clawed hand dismissively. Posturing, nothing more. The humans will complain to their allies, perhaps draft strongly worded messages of protest. That is all they are capable of. He turned back to the star map floating before him, studying the vast Corveth territory with satisfaction. Let them see what happens to those who cannot protect their own, he said. Let this be a lesson to every species watching. Strength is the only law that matters in this galaxy. None of them noticed the faint, barely detectable ripple moving through the asteroid field near their base. Small stealth ships, built with Earth's most advanced cloaking technology, slipping silently past their outer defenses. Aboard one of these stealth ships, a small strike team moved with quiet precision. Their leader, a young but experienced officer named Captain Lisa Torres, watched her scanner carefully as they approached the Corveth communication array. Systems confirm we're still undetected, whispered her second, a tech specialist named Ray Okafor. Their sensors aren't built to catch this kind of stealth signature. Good, Torres said. Let's keep it that way. Prep the charges. The team moved swiftly, planting small explosive devices along key points of the massive communication tower that connected the Corveth base to the rest of their empire. Every second mattered. If they were discovered too soon, the entire mission would collapse. Charges set, Ray confirmed after several tense minutes. Ready on your signal, Captain? Torres checked the time. The main strike fleet would be in position soon. Timing was everything. Hold, she said. Wait for the signal from command. Back on the Valiant Resolve, Admiral Whitfield watched the tactical display as Earth's strike fleet moved silently through the asteroid field, hidden from Corveth sensors by both stealth technology and the natural cover of floating rock and debris. Fleet in position, General Park reported. All ships ready and waiting for your order, Admiral. Whitfield took a slow breath. This was the moment that would define humanity's place among the stars, not as prey, but as a species capable of defending itself with both strength and honor. He thought of Captain Reyes lying wounded in a hospital bed. He thought of the doctors, the nurses, the children who never should have been targets. He thought of the innocent lives lost simply because someone believed humanity too weak to answer. Send the signal, Whitfield said firmly. Begin the operation. At that exact moment, Captain Torres received the command through her secure comm. This is command. Signal confirmed. Proceed. Copy that, Torres said. She turned to her team. Detonate. Ray pressed the trigger. A series of precise explosions tore through the Corveth communication array, destroying it instantly. Sparks and debris scattered silently through the vacuum of space. Inside the Corveth base, alarms began blaring as systems failed one after another. Report, Commander Vresh shouted, rising from his seat. Communication array destroyed, Kor said, disbelief clear in his voice. We've lost contact with the Outer Fleet and Homeworld Command. Impossible, Vresh snarled. The humans have no ships capable of reaching this deep into our territory undetected. Before anyone could respond, new alarms erupted across the bridge. Multiple contacts approaching from the asteroid field, an officer shouted. Unknown vessels, no, wait. Human warships. They're right on top of us. Vresh's confident expression shattered into disbelief as he turned to the view screen. Earth's strike fleet emerged from the asteroid field like a wave breaking through stone, their weapons already charging, moving with terrifying precision directly toward the heart of the Corveth base. That's impossible, Vresh whispered. Aboard the Valiant Resolve, Whitfield watched calmly as Earth's fleet moved into attack formation. All ships, target their weapons platforms and shipbuilding facilities only, he ordered. Avoid civilian and medical structures if any are present. We are not here to slaughter. We are here to cripple their ability to threaten us again. Understood, Admiral, came the reply from fleet captains across the channel. The battle began. Earth's warships moved with practiced coordination, striking key targets with devastating accuracy. Weapons platforms exploded one after another. Shipyards, filled with half-built warships meant to expand the Corveth's growing military power, were reduced to twisted wreckage. Corveth ships scrambled to respond, but their communication network, vital for coordinating a unified defense, remained crippled from the earlier stealth attack. Without it, their response was chaotic, disorganized, ships moving independently instead of as a coordinated force. "They're not fighting like an army," Park observed from the bridge of the Valiant Resolve. "They're fighting like individuals trying to save themselves." "Because that's exactly what they're doing," Whitfield said. "Without coordination, even a large force crumbles quickly." Explosions lit up the void of space as Earth's fleet systematically dismantled the Corvethe's military infrastructure. Yet, true to Whitfield's orders, they avoided anything resembling civilian housing or medical structures, striking only weapons, shipyards, and military command centers. Aboard the Dominion's Claw, Commander Vresh watched in stunned silence as his once mighty base burned around him. Ship after ship fell under Earth's precise, coordinated assault. This was not the disorganized, weak response he had expected. "Commander, orders?" Kor asked urgently, panic clear in his voice. Vresh's claws dug into the armrest of his chair, fury and disbelief warring across his scaled features. How did they organize this so quickly? How did they find us?" "Does it matter now?" Kor said. "We're losing ships by the second. We need to retreat." For a long moment, Vresh said nothing, watching as the humans he had so easily dismissed as weak systematically destroyed everything he had built. "Order a full retreat," he finally growled. "Fall back to the secondary base. We will regroup and—" Before he could finish, a massive explosion rocked the Dominion's Claw itself. Warning lights flooded the bridge. "Direct hit on our main power core," an officer shouted. "We're losing structural integrity." Vresh grabbed the edge of his console as the ship shuddered violently around him. Through the cracked view screen, he could see human warships moving closer, weapons still trained precisely on military targets, showing no signs of slowing their assault. "This cannot be happening," he whispered. Back on the Valiant Resolve, Admiral Whitfield watched as the tactical display showed the Corvette base crumbling under Earth's assault. Weapons platforms gone, shipyards destroyed, communication systems crippled beyond immediate repair. "Admiral," General Park said, "we've achieved our primary objectives. Their military capability in the system is effectively neutralized." Whitfield nodded slowly, watching the final explosions light up the darkness of space. "Order the fleet to hold position," he said. "No further offensive action unless directly threatened. We've made our point." "And the flagship?" Park asked, gesturing toward the heavily damaged Dominion's Claw, still drifting amid the wreckage of its own base. Whitfield studied the crippled enemy vessel for a long moment. "Hail them," he said finally. "It's time they heard directly from us." A moment later, a channel opened between the Valiant Resolve and the battered Dominion's Claw. On the screen, Commander Vresh appeared, his composure clearly shaken, blood visible along one side of his scaled face. "You have crippled my base," Vresh said, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "Is this your idea of justice, human?" Whitfield's expression remained calm, but his eyes were hard as steel. "You attacked an unarmed hospital ship," Whitfield said. "You murdered doctors, nurses, and wounded soldiers who posed no threat to you whatsoever. You did this without warning, without provocation, believing there would be no consequence." Vresh said nothing, his jaw clenched tight. "This," Whitfield continued, gesturing to the wreckage surrounding the Corvette commander's ship, "is the consequence. We could have destroyed your entire fleet today. We could have ended every life aboard that base. We chose not to." "Why?" Vresh demanded, disbelief clear in his voice. "Why show restraint after what we did?" "Because we are not you," Whitfield said simply. "We do not attack the defenseless. We do not kill without reason. But make no mistake, Commander. If you or any of your kind ever threaten innocent human lives again, what you experience today will seem merciful by comparison." Vresh stared at the screen, silent, processing the weight of the human admiral's words. "Stand down your remaining forces," Whitfield finished. "Return to your territory. Consider this your only warning." The channel closed. Whitfield turned away from the screen, letting out a slow breath as the tension of the day began to settle. Around him, Earth's fleet held its position, victorious but restrained, A clear message sent to a species that had once believed humanity too weak to answer for its wounded. "Admiral," Park said quietly, "what happens now?" Whitfield looked out at the stars, thinking of Captain Reyes, of Elena, Rachel, and little Toby, all recovering back on Earth, safe because of what had been accomplished today. "Now," he said, "we make sure the galaxy understands exactly who they're dealing with." But even as he said the words, a small, quiet thought lingered in the back of his mind. This was only the beginning. The Corveth were not the only ones watching. And somewhere out in the vast darkness of space, other eyes had witnessed exactly what humanity was capable of. 3 weeks had passed since Earth's fleet returned from Corveth space. On the surface, life had returned to a strange kind of normal. But everyone who had lived through those tense days knew that nothing would ever truly be the same again. At Earth Medical Station Alpha, sunlight streamed through the wide windows of the recovery ward, falling gently across the beds where the survivors of the Mercy Horizon were healing. Captain Daniel Reyes sat up slowly, testing his injured leg, wincing but determined. "Easy, Captain," said Elena, walking over with a cane in hand. "The doctor said another week before you're back on your feet properly." "I've had worse," Daniel said, though his tired smile suggested otherwise. Nearby, Rachel sat beside Toby's bed, reading him a story from an old paper book. The boy's color had returned, his laughter light and easy as he listened to her voice. It was hard to believe this was the same terrified child who had huddled in the dark, unsure if he would survive. "He's doing well," Elena said, following Daniel's gaze. "Better than any of us expected." "Children are stronger than we give them credit for," Daniel said quietly. At that moment, the ward doors opened and Admiral Whitfield walked in, dressed in his formal uniform. The room's mood shifted immediately, respect and gratitude visible on every face. "Admiral," Daniel said, straightening despite the pain in his leg. "This is a surprise." "At ease, Captain," Whitfield said, waving a hand. "I came to see how you and your people were recovering, and to thank you personally." "Thank us?" Daniel asked, confused. "Your black box recording gave us everything we needed," Whitfield explained. "Without it, we wouldn't have known who attacked you or why. Your quick thinking saved more than your own crew, Captain. It gave Earth the truth it needed to respond properly." Daniel glanced toward Rachel, Toby, Elena, Priya, and Frank, all alive because they had refused to give up, even in their darkest moment. "We just wanted to survive," Daniel said. "Everything else was just trying to do what was right." Whitfield nodded, understanding clearly written on his face. That's often all it takes. Later that day, in Earth's Central Command building, Whitfield stood before a massive gathering of reporters, government officials, and representatives from allied worlds who had learned of the conflict. Cameras from across Earth and its colonies broadcast the moment live, watched by billions. 3 weeks ago, Whitfield began, his voice steady and clear, an unarmed medical ship, the Mercy Horizon, was attacked without warning by the Corveth military. Doctors, nurses, wounded soldiers, and even children were targeted simply because someone believed humanity too weak, too disorganized to respond. He paused, letting his words settle over the silent room. They were wrong. A murmur passed through the crowd. Earth's response was swift, precise, and controlled. Whitfield continued. "We did not seek to destroy an entire species. We did not seek endless war. We sought only to demonstrate one simple truth. Humanity will protect its own, and there will always be consequences for those who target the innocent." A reporter raised a hand. "Admiral, is Earth now at war with the Corveth Empire?" "No," Whitfield answered firmly. "We have received formal communication from Corveth leadership acknowledging the attack was unauthorized aggression by a rogue commander seeking to test human resolve. That commander has been removed from his position. The Corveth Empire has issued a formal apology and agreed to strict new terms guaranteeing the safety of neutral and medical vessels in the future." The hospital ship Mercy Horizon moved slowly through the quiet dark of space. It was a huge ship, white and clean, with a red cross painted on its side. This mark told every living being in the galaxy one simple thing. This ship does not fight. This ship only heals. Inside, the halls were calm. Soft lights glowed above long rows of beds. Machines beeped in a steady rhythm. Nurses walked quietly between patients, checking wounds, giving medicine, writing notes on their screens. In one corner of the medical bay, a young nurse named Elena sat beside a wounded soldier. His name was Marcus. He had lost his right leg in a border skirmish 3 weeks ago. His face was pale, but his eyes were calm. "How long until I can go home?" Marcus asked. Elena smiled and checked his chart. 2 more weeks, soldier. Your new leg is healing well. You will walk again before you know it." Marcus nodded slowly. "My daughter turns 5 next month. I promised her I would be there." "You will be," Elena said softly. "I promise." A few beds away, a small boy named Toby lay wrapped in a blue blanket. He was only 7 years old. His parents had died in an accident on a mining colony, and now he was alone, recovering from burns on his arms. A doctor named Rachel sat beside him, telling him a story about a brave space captain who saved a whole planet. "Is the story true?" Toby asked, his eyes wide. "Some of it," Rachel said with a gentle laugh. "The best stories always have a little truth in them." This was life on the Mercy horizon. No weapons, no fear, only healing, hope, and quiet kindness. But far above the ship, in the black emptiness of space, something was watching. Captain Daniel Reyes stood on the bridge looking out at the stars. He was a tall man in his 40s, with gray hair at his temples and tired eyes that had seen too many wars. He had asked for this position because he was done with fighting. He wanted to save lives now, not take them. "Captain," said Lieutenant Sarah Kim, the ship's sensor officer, "I'm picking up something on long-range scan." Daniel walked over to her station. "What is it?" Sarah's fingers moved quickly across her screen. "Multiple contacts, moving fast, bearing 210, coming from the outer system." Daniel frowned. "How many?" "At least 12 ships," Sarah said. Her voice had a small shake in it. "Captain, their weapon signatures are active." The bridge went quiet. "Open a channel," Daniel said. "All frequencies." A moment later, his voice went out into space. "This is Captain Daniel Reyes of the hospital ship Mercy Horizon. We are a medical vessel, unarmed and protected under the Galactic Neutrality Accord. We are carrying wounded soldiers and civilians. Please identify yourselves." Silence. "Captain," Sarah said, her eyes locked on her screen. "They are not slowing down. Speed increasing. They will reach us in 6 minutes." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Try again. All languages, all frequencies." He repeated the message. Still, no response came back. "Sir," said the ship's pilot, a young man named Oliver, "should we try to run?" Daniel shook his head. "This ship's top speed is a joke compared to warships. We won't outrun them. Sound the alert. Get every patient who can move to the escape pods. Move the ones who can't to the lower decks, reinforced walls there." Alarms began to wail through the ship. Red lights flashed along every hallway. In the medical bay, Elena froze when she heard the alarm. "What's happening?" Marcus asked, trying to sit up. "I don't know," Elena said, "but we need to move you. Now." Nurses and doctors rushed through the halls, pushing beds, carrying patients who could not walk on their own. Toby grabbed Rachel's hand tightly, his small fingers shaking. "Are the bad guys coming?" he whispered. Rachel forced a calm smile onto her face, even though her heart was pounding. "We're just being careful, Toby, that's all." But she did not believe her own words. Back on the bridge, Sarah's voice cracked with fear. "Captain, they are still not responding. Range, 2 minutes." Daniel stared out the window. He could see them now. Dark shapes against the stars, growing larger every second. 12 ships, sleek and sharp, like blades cutting through the void. "This makes no sense," Daniel said quietly. "We're clearly marked. They can see the cross. They know what the ship is." "Maybe they don't care," Sarah said. Daniel picked up the comm again. His voice was steady. though his hands were not. "Unknown vessels, this is your final warning. We are a hospital ship. We carry no weapons. If you attack, you will be violating galactic law. Stand down." The alien ships did not slow down. They did not answer. They opened fire. The first blast hit the outer hull of the Mercy Horizon like a hammer striking glass. The whole ship shook violently. Lights flickered. Somewhere below, metal screamed as it tore apart. "Direct hit on Deck 4, Sarah shouted over the noise. "We've lost pressure in the east wing." "Emergency doors sealed?" Daniel yelled. "Sealing now. Wait, no. Deck 4 doors are jammed. People are trapped in there." Daniel's stomach turned to ice. Deck 4 was where the children's ward was. "Get a repair team down there immediately," he ordered. Another blast hit the ship, then another. The Mercy Horizon rocked hard, throwing crew members off their feet. Medical equipment crashed to the floor. In the halls, patients screamed as beds slid and crashed into walls. In the medical bay, Elena threw herself over Marcus's bed as debris fell from the ceiling. "Stay down," she shouted. Marcus grabbed her arm. "You need to get the others out. Go, I'll be fine." "I'm not leaving you." Another explosion rocked the ship. The lights above them shattered, showering sparks across the room. On Deck 4, Rachel held Toby close as the ceiling cracked open above them. Smoke filled the hallway. The emergency doors, meant to protect them, would not open. "I'm scared," Toby whispered, his voice barely audible over the alarms. Rachel held him tighter. "I know, I'm scared too, but I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere." She looked around the smoke-filled room, searching for any way out. There was none. On the bridge, Oliver's hands moved desperately over the controls. "Captain, weapons are useless when we don't have any. Shields are failing. We can't take much more of this." Daniel looked at the screen showing the enemy ships. They were not even using their full power. They were toying with the Mercy Horizon, like a child pulling wings off an insect. "Send the distress signal," Daniel said. "Everything we have. Send it to Earth Command and send it to every ship in range." "Captain, the signal might not reach anyone in time." "Send it anyway," Daniel shouted. "Someone needs to know what happened here." Sarah's fingers flew across her console. "Signal sending now, Captain. Distress code Omega-7, it's going out." Another explosion. This one was closer. The bridge itself shook so hard that Sarah was thrown from her chair. Daniel grabbed the edge of his console to stay standing. Smoke was filling the bridge now. Through the cracked window, he could see one of the alien ships moving closer, its weapon glowing bright, preparing to fire again. He thought of Elena, of Rachel, of little Toby in the children's ward. He thought of every soldier lying helpless in a bed, unable to run, unable to fight. "I'm sorry," he whispered, though no one could hear him. "I'm so sorry." The final blast hit directly on the bridge. Then silence. Far across the galaxy, in a quiet control room on Earth, an alarm began to blink red on a screen no one had expected to see activated. A young officer named Grace Chen looked up from her station, confused. "Sir," she called to her commander, "we just received a distress signal, code Omega-7. Her commander, an older man named Admiral James Whitfield, walked over slowly. His face went pale when he read the message on the screen. "That's the code for the Mercy Horizon," he said quietly. "Our hospital ship." "What does the message say?" Grace asked. Whitfield read the words carefully, his hands tightened into fists as he did. "Under attack, unprovoked, unknown hostile fleet, 12 ships, no warning given, requesting immediate..." The message cut off there. Nothing more came through. The room fell silent. Every officer turned to look at the Admiral, waiting for him to say something. Whitfield stared at the screen for a long moment. His jaw was tight, his eyes hard as stone. "Pull every recording we have from that ship's black box relay," he said finally. "I want to know exactly what happened out there. Every second of it." "Yes, sir," Grace said, already typing. Whitfield turned toward the window, looking out at the stars beyond Earth's orbit. Somewhere out there, a ship full of the innocent and the wounded had just been attacked without reason, without warning, without mercy. He did not yet know who had done this. But he knew, deep in his chest, that Earth was not going to let this go unanswered. "Get me the Joint Command," he said quietly. "Tonight everything changes." The wreck of the Mercy Horizon drifted silently in space. Fires that once burned along its broken hull had gone out, starved of air. Chunks of metal floated around it like dead leaves in a pond. From a distance it looked like nothing more than space junk, a forgotten piece of scrap. But inside, in the deepest, most protected part of the ship, something was still alive. Deck 4 had collapsed in on itself when the enemy fire struck. But one section, a reinforced storage room next to the children's ward, had survived. When the ceiling caved in, it had actually helped. It sealed off a small pocket of the hallway, trapping the air inside, keeping out the vacuum of space. Rachel opened her eyes slowly. Her head throbbed with pain. Dust and smoke hung in the air around her. For a moment, she could not remember where she was. Then she remembered. "Toby," she gasped. She looked around in the dim emergency lighting. The boy was curled up beside her, coughing weakly but alive. "Toby, can you hear me?" she said, pulling him close. He nodded, his small face streaked with dirt and tears. "It's dark," he whispered. "I know," Rachel said. "But we're okay. We're going to be okay." She was not sure she believed it herself. Nearby, she heard groaning. She crawled through the rubble and found 2 more survivors, a young engineer named Priya, who had a broken arm, and an older soldier named Frank, who was bleeding from a cut on his head but conscious. "Is anyone else alive?" Priya asked, her voice shaking. "I don't know," Rachel said. "We need to find out." Meanwhile, on the bridge, or what remained of it, Captain Daniel Reyes lay pinned beneath a fallen support beam. He was alive, but barely. Blood trickled from a wound on his forehead. Around him the bridge was dark and silent, its systems dead. He tried to move, but pain shot through his leg. He gritted his teeth and pushed against the beam with all his strength. Slowly, painfully, he managed to free himself. He crawled to what was left of the communication console. Most of it was destroyed, but a small emergency light still blinked on one corner of the panel. "Come on," he whispered, pressing buttons with shaking hands. "Come on. Work." A faint hum answered him. A tiny screen flickered to life. Black box recorder. Active. Transmitting to Earth Command. Daniel let out a breath of relief. At least now, whatever happened to him, the truth would reach Earth. He looked around the destroyed bridge, thinking of his crew, his patients, everyone who had trusted him to keep them safe. Guilt pressed down on his chest, heavier than the beam that had trapped him. "I have to find survivors," he said to himself. He pulled himself up, leaning against the wall, and limped toward the exit. Far away on Earth, Admiral Whitfield sat in a dark briefing room with a small group of senior officers. On the large screen in front of them played the recovered black box footage from the Mercy Horizon, the final minutes before the attack. They watched Captain Reyes calmly identify his ship as a hospital vessel. They watched him repeat his warning, again and again. They watched the alien ships approach without any response at all. Then they watched the first missile strike. No one in the room spoke. They simply watched, their faces growing paler with every explosion, every scream picked up by the ship's internal microphones. When the footage ended, Whitfield turned off the screen. The room was silent except for the quiet hum of the air conditioning. "There was no warning," said General Park, a stern woman with sharp eyes. "No demand, no message. They attacked a marked hospital ship without a single word. The Neutrality Accord protects hospital ships across every known territory," said Colonel Ahmed, another officer at the table. "Even species we've never met before generally respect it. This is not how first contact happens. This is not how anyone behaves unless they wanted this exact result," Whitfield finished. Everyone looked at him. "Think about it," Whitfield continued. "A hospital ship, full of wounded soldiers, doctors, and civilians. No weapons, no defenses. If you wanted to test how humanity would react to an attack, to see if we would fight back or fold, What better target than one we could never justify not defending? General Park frowned. You think this was intentional? A test? I think, Whitfield said slowly. We need to find out who did this, and why, before we decide anything else. Grace Chen, the young officer who had first received the distress signal, walked into the room holding a data pad. Admiral, we've identified the ship markings from the black box footage. Show us, Whitfield said. Grace displayed an image on the main screen. A sharp, blade-like warship with strange purple markings along its hull. These ships belong to a species called the Corveth, Grace explained. According to old records from our first deep space probes, the Corveth are known for their strict hierarchy and their belief that strength defines worth. They've had no direct contact with Earth before now, only distant sightings. So they don't know us, Colonel Ahmed said. Not really. They know enough, Whitfield said grimly. They saw a helpless ship and attacked it without hesitation. That tells us everything we need to know about how they view us. General Park leaned forward. Do we know why they specifically targeted the Mercy horizon? Was it random or planned? Grace hesitated. That's the strange part, sir. Our satellites recorded the Corveth fleet changing course 3 days before the attack. They came directly here. This wasn't random. They were looking for this ship. The room went quiet again. They knew what it was, Whitfield said. They saw the cross. They saw it was unarmed. And they attacked it anyway, on purpose. Back on the wreck of the Mercy horizon, Captain Reyes moved slowly through the broken corridors, calling out for survivors. His leg burned with every step, but he refused to stop. Anyone there? Call out if you can hear me. A weak voice answered from behind a collapsed wall. Here, we're here. Daniel pushed aside broken panels until he found a gap large enough to see through. On the other side, he saw Elena, kneeling beside Marcus, who was unconscious, but breathing. Captain, Elena said, relief flooding her face. You're alive. Barely, Daniel said. Is he stable? For now, Elena said, but we need to get out of here. The air in this section won't last much longer. Together, they worked to widen the gap, pulling away broken metal piece by piece. Daniel's hands bled from the sharp edges, but he did not stop. Finally, the gap was large enough. He helped pull Marcus through, then Elena. There are others, Daniel said. I heard voices near the storage section on Deck 4. That's where the children's ward was, Elena said, her eyes widening. They moved as quickly as they could through the wreckage, following the sound of distant voices until they found the sealed section where Rachel, Toby, Priya, and Frank had taken shelter. When Rachel saw the captain, tears filled her eyes. You found us. I promised no one gets left behind on my ship, Daniel said. I meant it. Toby ran forward and hugged Daniel's leg tightly. Daniel winced from the pain but did not pull away. He simply placed a hand gently on the boy's head. You're safe now, he said softly. I promise. But even as he said the words, he knew the danger was far from over. The ship was dead. Its systems were gone, and somewhere out there, the enemy fleet could return at any moment. Back on Earth, Admiral Whitfield stood before the full Joint Command Council, leaders from every major nation, all connected through secure video links. The room was tense, filled with worried faces from across the world. I've reviewed the footage myself, said President Elena Marsh, Earth's highest civilian leader, her voice heavy. There is no question this was a deliberate, unprovoked attack on an unarmed medical vessel. The Corveth broke every rule of galactic conduct, General Park added. If we do nothing, every species watching will see Earth as weak, a target with no consequences for attacking us. And if we retaliate, said another voice, cautious, we risk starting a war with a species whose full military strength we don't understand. The room fell into tense arguing. Some pushed for immediate overwhelming force. Others urged caution, fearing an unknown enemy's true power. Whitfield finally raised his hand for silence. I understand the fear, he said. I share it. But let me say this clearly. This was not a battle. This was a massacre, Doctors, nurses, wounded soldiers, children. None of them could fight back. None of them were given a single chance to surrender or explain themselves. The Corveth did not attack a threat. They attacked the weak, believing there would be no cost. He paused, letting his words settle over the room. If we let this go unanswered, we tell every species in this galaxy that humanity's wounded and helpless are fair targets. We tell them mercy is weakness. I will not accept that message being sent. President Marsh studied him carefully. What are you proposing, Admiral? A precise, decisive response, Whitfield said. Not blind revenge, not a full war, but a message so clear, so absolute, that no species will ever again believe attacking a defenseless human ship comes without consequence. Silence filled the room as the leaders considered his words. Finally, President Marsh nodded slowly. Prepare your forces, Admiral. But I want precision, not chaos. We answer this as who we are, not as monsters, but as a people who will not be tested twice. Whitfield straightened, a fierce determination burning in his tired eyes. Understood, Madam President. We'll make sure they understand exactly who they attacked. Meanwhile, drifting silently among the wreckage of the Mercy Horizon, Captain Reyes gathered his small group of survivors in the one stable room left on the ship. Emergency oxygen supplies were limited. Rescue, if it came at all, would take time. Elena checked Marcus's pulse again, her face tight with worry. Rachel held Toby close, humming a quiet song to calm him. Priya sat against the wall, cradling her broken arm, while Frank kept watch near the door, alert for any sign of danger. Daniel looked around at his surviving crew and patients, battered, exhausted, but alive. Help is coming, he said, trying to sound confident. Earth received our signal. They know what happened here. And if the Corveth come back before help arrives? Frank asked quietly. Daniel did not have an answer. He simply looked out through a small crack in the hull, out at the endless stars, and hoped that somewhere out there, Earth was already moving to make things right. He did not know it yet, but far across the galaxy, the wheels of Earth's retaliation had already begun to turn, and nothing would stop what was coming next. 3 days had passed since the attack on the Mercy Horizon. In a massive shipyard orbiting Earth, thousands of engineers, soldiers, and pilots worked around the clock. Ships that had been resting in reserve fleets were now being armed, fueled, and prepared for war. Admiral Whitfield stood on the observation deck of Earth's flagship, the Valiant Resolve, watching as dozens of warships gathered in formation outside the window. Their hulls gleamed under the light of the sun, sharp and powerful, built from decades of hard-earned lessons in survival. Behind him, the deck doors opened. General Park walked in, holding a data pad. Admiral, the fleet is ready, she said. 22 warships, 3 carrier vessels, and full support crews. All personnel volunteered for this mission. Whitfield nodded slowly. And the survivors from the Mercy Horizon? A rescue team recovered them 6 hours ago, Park said. Captain Reyes and 5 others, all alive, though some are in serious condition. They're being treated at Earth Medical Station Alpha. A small wave of relief passed through Whitfield's chest. At least something good had come from this nightmare. Good, he said. I want Captain Reyes's full report as soon as he's able to give it. Every detail matters. Yes, sir, Park said. She paused, studying him carefully. Admiral, may I speak freely? Always. Some of the younger officers are nervous, Park admitted. This will be humanity's first real conflict with another intelligent species. No one knows the full strength of the Corveth. We're moving in mostly blind. Whitfield turned to face her fully. I understand the fear, General, but we are not moving blind. We know exactly what they did, and we know exactly why. That is more than enough reason to act, and more than enough reason to act carefully. Park nodded. Understood, sir. Whitfield looked back out at the assembled fleet. Gather the strike team leaders. It's time we discussed the plan. In the briefing room of the Valiant Resolve, a dozen senior officers sat around a long table, each representing different divisions of Earth's combined military forces. At the head of the table, a large holographic display showed a map of known space. with a single red marker glowing near the edge of explored territory, the last known position of the Corveth fleet. Our scouts tracked the Corveth ships retreating toward this system, said Colonel Ahmed, pointing to the marker. Deep space sensors confirm a large staging base here, hidden behind an asteroid field. It appears to be their primary military outpost in this region. How large is the base? Whitfield asked. Large, Ahmed said. Satellite imaging suggests it can house at least 50 warships, along with repair facilities and weapons storage. A murmur passed through the room. That's a significant force, General Park said. If we attack directly, we risk heavy losses. We're not attacking directly, Whitfield said calmly. We're going to be smarter than that. He stepped forward, activating a new part of the hologram, a detailed schematic of the Corveth base, gathered from intercepted signals and long-range scans. The Corveth believe strength is the only language worth respecting, Whitfield explained. They also believe humanity is weak, disorganized, incapable of coordinated retaliation. That belief is their weakness. He pointed to several key locations on the schematic. We use stealth teams to disable their long-range communication array first, cutting off their ability to call for reinforcements. At the same time, our strike fleet approaches from this unguarded flank, using the asteroid field as cover to close the distance undetected. You want to hit their base directly? Colonel Ahmed asked. No, Whitfield said. We want to hit their pride. The room fell silent, listening closely. A full assault risks turning this into an all-out war, Whitfield continued. Instead, we send a message. We destroy their capability to strike again without warning, their long-range weapons platforms, their shipbuilding facilities, their communication systems. We cripple their ability to threaten us without wiping out their entire species. Mercy, even now? Park asked quietly. Justice, Whitfield corrected. Not mercy. We are not the ones who attacked helpless people. We will not become monsters simply because they gave us reason to fight. But make no mistake, when this is finished, the Corveth will understand exactly what happens to those who attack humanity's innocent. The officers around the table exchanged glances, then nodded in agreement, one by one. Prepare the fleet, Whitfield said. We move within the hour. Meanwhile, deep within the Corveth home fleet, aboard their flagship Dominion's Claw, Commander Vresh Talon stood before his war council, reviewing footage from the attack on the human hospital ship. His scaled face showed no emotion as he watched the humans' desperate final moments play out on the screen. The target has been eliminated, said his second-in-command, a sharp-eyed officer named Kor. As you predicted, the humans made no attempt to fight back. As expected, Vresh said coldly. Weak, unprepared. Their so-called protected ships mean nothing against true strength.